Well, hello everyone, welcome back guys. Hope you all are doing well. Today we are going to solve the last lab of API testing module, and this is going to be lab number 5, and the difficulty level of this lab is expert. So before going to this lab, this is basically very much similar to the lab number 4, the previous lab, where we exploited the server-side parameter pollution in a query string. But here the only difference is in this lab we have to see REST URL. Okay, so before going further to this lab, let's just talk about the REST URL. Okay, so here within the server-side parameter pollution, there is a section testing REST paths, okay, or REST URLs. So what happens sometimes, the user who send the request to the server to perform some specific task, he's gonna send the request like this with the query string. Okay, now this request is sent to the server, and then server is going to call to the API. But once the server call the API, server send that API request in a different form. So instead of parameter query, what server will do, server will change this query to something like this. Okay, let's say like this. So what's happening here, server takes this value and convert this into REST URL path. Okay, so as you can see, this is API/private, this is the API endpoint, and then there is users, which is a resource, and the username is Peter. So name is equal to Peter means user is equal to Peter. There is a thin abstraction layer which a user does not know about it, because the API cannot be called directly by the user. So user always send the request to the front end server, then front end server take the input from the request and create its own request to the API server. So user is never gonna see the API server directly. Fine. So you can see this, what this URL is all about. This /API is the root API endpoint, then users, this represents our resources, in this case users, and 123 is a parameter or the unique identifier for the user. Fine. So now consider an application that enables you to edit user profiles based on their username. Requests are sent to the following endpoint. Now this time we are trying to edit user where the username is Peter. Okay, so we send the request to the server like this with the query string. But to perform this task, server need to call the API. How the server is going to call API? So it's going to create that request, which is server side request, and it is going to put your query string input like this. So API/private, this is going to be the API endpoint, and then this is resource, and this is the value of the parameter what you put here. Fine. So we will see that in a minute in action. Now the problem here is what an attacker may be able to manipulate the server side URL path parameter to exploit the API. How? Because if a user or end user or a threat actor feels that the server is taking the input from us as a client and then take this input and create a server side request to the API server like this, then the attacker may try to path traverser attack. Okay, so you can see, to test this vulnerability, add path traverser sequence to modify parameter and observe how the application respond. Okay, so you can submit the URL encoded value like peter./admin as the value of the name parameter. So this is something like this. Now, if we know that the server is also generating one request to the API server, but in the REST URL form, so what we can try the path traverser attack. Okay, something like this, and let's say I'm gonna say admin. Okay, now because this input is taken by the server, and the server will create its server side request to the API server. So let's see. Now this part is going to be something like this, and now you can see here it is trying to perform the path traversal attack. Now the thing is, to mitigate this kind of vulnerability, the backend API must normalize this path. So it is not going to take this whole thing, it is just going to take the last one, this one. So it will be look like this after normalization, okay, or after the path is normalized, it is going to always see something like this. So in that instant, the path traversal will be mitigated. Fine. So that's enough. Now we go back to our lab. This is our lab. And to solve this lab, what we need to do, we need to just log in as administrator and delete the Carlos account. And to solve this lab, we need to know these 3 points. How to identify whether a user input is included in the server side URL path or query string, how to use path traversal sequence to attempt to change a server side request. And this is what we just see. How to discover API documentation. Okay, so API documentation, we already did that in the first lab, but we will see more in this lab. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to access the lab here. Okay, now this is our lab. I'm going to start the burp, turn on the burp proxy on the browser, and I'm just going to surf everything and see every option. Perhaps we will get the API endpoint, but in this lab we are not going to see the API endpoint, because as I mentioned that the client will interact with a front-end server, and front-end server is going to call the backend API, calling the API server by REST URL. Fine. So now I'm just directly go to the my account, and within the my account there is forget password feature. Once we click to forget password feature, you can see there is a JavaScript file named as forgetpassword.js. So I think you are familiar with this file, because in lab 4 we already engaged, or we already saw this file. Okay, I'm not going to explain the code for this file, because I already did it in lab 4. Okay, but now let's go first to try to change the administrator password, and this is also similar to the lab 4. Now we need to check out the email. So what basically it's doing, when we try to forget our password, at that instant it is going to generate one reset token and save that reset token in a field, okay, named as password reset or reset underscore token, or whatever the name of the field. We already have that field name here. Okay, so you can see it here. If I just copy the URL, come back here, and let's just paste that. So you can see this is the field name. In this lab, the field name is password reset token. Fine. So anytime any user generate the token, it is going to saved in a field, and then it is going to send an email to the user associated email with the complete link to reset the password with something like this. Okay, and there we need to put the reset token. So once the user click it, it will get the page to put the new password and confirm password, and then done, his password is changed. So this is the whole thing. Now we are going to focus on this request, which is the forget password post request. So you can see there is username is equal to administrator. So I'm going to send this request to the repeater, send this request again, so that we can confirm that everything is okay. Now if you see this one, maybe this request is something like this, right? Name is equal to Peter. We can say it could be username equal to Peter or username is equal to administrator. Then we send this request to the server, then server generate another API request to call the API, but the server generated request is the REST URL. So instead of this, it is maybe going to say users. Inside users, it is calling username, and the username is administrator. Something like this is happening there. Okay. So now let's go and we will try, let's say, hash, send this request. So this is actually truncating the trailing data. Okay, so that means the server put the input in the path of the server side request, and this hash is truncating the trailing data. And now you can see once we put the hash here, you can also make it URL encode and send again the same result. So the result is saying invalid route, please refer to the API definition. So that means the route is not correct. What we need to do here is /admin, send this request again, and invalid route, please refer to the same thing. If I delete that hash value and send this again, you can see this time we get the correct response, although we put here /. So what this / is doing, it is basically the present working directory, so it does not take us to anywhere. What if I say, let's say, cd desktop, and within the desktop we have API testing. Okay, now the present working directory is this. Okay, now if I say, okay, change directory, and change directory to this one and send it and check the present working directory, now you can see we are still in the same directory as before. Okay, so // does not take us anything. It is basically the present working directory. But if we want to jump one directory back, we can say change directory to // and now if I say present working directory, you can see we come to the root/desktop, and so we jump one directory back. Fine. So similarly we are going to do the same thing. So now jump one directory back, send the request again, and it's saying invalid route. Now we need to test it until we get something different. Still same. Now jump one more directory back, send it, and same. Jump one directory back one more time, and this time you can see error gets changed. Now it's saying unexpected message from API server, and the title is saying not found. Not found means the URL that you requested was not found. The URL we requested not found. Why so? Let's try to put here hash so that it can truncate, send, and the same thing. But that shows one thing, what it is. Now it is confirmed that we escaped or we break out from the API root directory. If we come out or get out from that directory, what we can do? Let's see. If the OpenAPI is being used, there is an OpenAPI file. So I already opened this Swagger editor. Remember in the first, second, and third, in these three videos where I define what is API, difference between REST and SOAP, and where I define the OpenAPI documentation, where I show you the Swagger, I mentioned somewhere that there are two types of OpenAPI files. The first one is YAML, and the second one is in the form of JSON. So as you can see here, the most important part here is this swagger.yaml. If you see here, you can see there is one more file named as openapi.yaml. Okay, so if you research more, let's say going to the Google and ask to Google what are the file extensions for Open API. So you can see there are two extensions, JSON and YAML. So here in this documentation, we get only YAML, but the other extension or other form is .json. So what I'm going to try, because now we already escaped the directory, I'm going to try this one, open api.yaml, and send this request. You can see the same thing. Also, let's try to truncate it. Nothing changed, right? Now let's just change this extension to JSON and send the request again. And now you can see the error gets changed. And this time we found some useful information, very, very useful. Now you can see it is actually exposing the path of the API. So this is going to be the path. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Fine. So that means if we see that path, you can now consider how it's working. So instead of username, it is going to say username is administrator or Carlos or anything. Okay, now it is specifying the field, and here is the field ID or field name, sorry. It could be something like this. Let's say paste. So it's saying username is equal to administrator and field is equal to, let's say, email. Okay, email. So something like this happening. Okay, fine. So let's go. We are just going to concentrate on this one. And now we can take out everything from here. And I'm just gonna say administrator. So user/administrator/field, and the field name is email. Okay, now send this request. Invalid route, please refer to the API, truncate this one. And yeah, that's working fine. So now you can see that we are getting the response from this. So we manipulate this user controlled value, which we can control. And because in the server side, it is converting it into the REST URL. So the URL is going to see as path. Okay, now if we try, let's say username. Okay, username. So you can see this version of API only supports the email field for security reason. That means any other field cannot be responded by the server. The server will not respond. API server will not respond on this. So if I come back here and just take this field, copy back here, and we paste that field, send that, and the same response that API only support the email field for the security reason. That means maybe there is another version of API is there, because it's saying this version of API only support. So maybe there is another version. And if you see this path, okay, which we got from the error, you can see there is version 1. So we need to find out which version is working here. One thing I would do here first, because you can see before we found this path, okay, 4 directory backs. So if I send this again, unexpected, if we even remove this one, same, unexpected. So what we need to do here is we need to jump to 2 directory back, means users and VI. So back here, this directory is users and this is the directory V1. Okay, this is something what the server client is sending the path URL, REST URL to the API server. Now, once we send this, you can see provided field name, password reset. Oh, sorry. Yes, password reset token. Send it again. And yes, it's working fine. Now you can see that we get the password reset token of the administrator user. But if we go back to this, you can see the API version only support the email and does not support any other field for the security reason. Any other field it is not going to respond. So maybe another version or the upgraded version is being used. What happened many times, because software development is an ongoing process, every day requirements gets changed and upgradations of the applications, this is ongoing process. So developers, they develop the upgraded version of the previous API, okay, and they publish that version. But the previous version is also in use. The organizations, they do not shut down the previous API. They keep the previous API and the upgraded version of API leave working. Okay, so that is very important. If you are going to upgrade the API, you must shut down the previous version of API until there is some compatibility issues and you want the users using old devices, they also keep working. So the only thing here in a nutshell that sometimes organization leave their old version of APIs working, and that is the problem. So if we go back here, where is it? Yeah, this one. So if we go there, you can see with the version 1, it is showing us the password reset token. So we need to think a bit out of the box, and I'm going to see whether there is version 2 or not. And as you can see, this wherever we find this error message that this API, this version of API only support email, that means it is using version 2. This is the upgraded version, but they leave working, they leave version 1 working. So if any user check out that part and go to the version 1, he will get whatever he want, because the version 1 is vulnerable. Fine. From here, I'm just going to copy this back to this, and here I'm just going to paste that and back again, copy the token and paste it here, hit enter. Now you can see we can change the password of the administrator user, and I can change it, submit. Now let's log into the administrator user. And the password is this. Okay, now we have admin panel. And from here we can delete user. Okay, and as you can see, congratulations, the lab is solved. Fine. So that's it for this video. Hope you understand it. If you have any query, please put your query in the comment section. And if you like the content, please like, subscribe and share. I'm going to see you in the next module. Bye.